The jungle holds ancient secrets, and some were never meant to be found. In the suffocating heat of the Amazon, archaeologist Marcus Hale lies bleeding in the murky shallows, his leg mangled by a massive crocodile. Death seems certain until a painted warrior leaps from the canopy, spear raised against the prehistoric predator. As consciousness fades, Marcus glimpses a village hidden for centuries, preserved from the outside world's greed. Days later, he awakens in a civilization untouched by time, saved by the very people his expedition threatened. Now he must choose between academic glory and protecting a vanishing way of life. Will Marcus betray the man who saved him, or become the guardian of a history that was never his to claim? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The polished oak door of the university conference room swung open as Marcus Hale strode in. 20 minutes late and unapologetic, the archaeology department board members exchanged glances that spoke volumes. A projector illuminated the far wall with satellite images of the Amazon basin. Mysterious formations barely visible through the canopy. Gentlemen. Ladies, Marcus nodded, setting his worn leather satchel on the table. At 38, his salt and pepper beard and weathered face suggested a man who'd spent more time in the field than in lecture halls. I trust you've reviewed my proposal. Dean Whitaker removed his glasses with deliberate slowness. Dr. Hale, the department has concerns about this expedition. The region you're proposing to enter has explicit warnings from both the Brazilian government and indigenous rights organizations. Marcus pulled out his grandfather's tattered journal, the binding held together with duct tape. The room fell silent as he placed it on the table, open to a hand-drawn map with annotations in faded ink. My grandfather encountered stone structures in this region in 1962, structures that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of pre-Columbian civilizations. His finger traced a river bend. He was forced to turn back due to illness, but his notes describe architecture on a scale that would rewrite history. Professor Zhang, the department's senior archaeologist, leaned forward. Marcus, we're not questioning the potential significance. We're questioning the methods. The Mata Verde tribe has explicitly denied access to researchers, a tribe that hasn't been officially documented in 50 years, Marcus countered. My satellite analysis suggests they've relocated at least 30 miles from the site I'm targeting. Sophia Diaz, his graduate assistant, cleared her throat. Actually, recent anthropological studies suggest the Mata Verde maintains seasonal migrations. The site could very well be within their territory during the time frame of our expedition. Marcus shot her a look of betrayal. Sophia held his gaze, unwavering. Which is precisely why we need to document these ruins before they're reclaimed by the jungle, Marcus pressed. Or worse, discovered by logging operations pushing into the region. Dean Whitaker sighed. The university cannot officially endorse an expedition that potentially violates indigenous territorial rights. Marcus reached into his satchel and withdrew a stone figurine. Placing it gently on the polished table, the small artifact depicted a humanoid figure with elaborate headdress, carved from jade with remarkable detail. The board members leaned in despite themselves. This was my grandfather's, found at the edge of the territory. Marcus watched their scholarly interest ignite. The craftsmanship suggests a civilization far more advanced than anything previously documented in the region. Carbon dating places it at approximately 800 CE. Professor Zhang picked up the figurine, examining it with expert eyes. The stylistic elements don't match known Amazonian cultures. Exactly, Marcus said, victory in his voice. We're looking at potentially undocumented cultural exchange or an entirely unknown civilization. The board members exchanged glances, their academic curiosity battling with ethical considerations. I'm going with or without departmental backing, Marcus stated flatly. But without it, any discoveries become my intellectual property rather than the university's. Dean Whitaker removed his glasses again, this time pinching the bridge of his nose. A limited expedition. Small footprint. You document only, no excavation without separate approval. And Sophia goes with you as the department's ethical compliance officer. Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. Agreed, Marcus said quickly, before the terms could change. As the meeting adjourned, Sophia cornered Marcus in the hallway. That was manipulative, even for you, Marcus smiled, pocketing the jade figurine. Sometimes academia needs a push, Sophia. In 6 months they'll be celebrating our discovery rather than questioning the methods. And if we encounter the Mata Verde, we respectfully document from a distance and focus on the ruins, Marcus said smoothly. This isn't my first expedition, but it's your most personal, Sophia observed, nodding toward the journal he clutched. Your grandfather's legacy isn't worth sacrificing your ethics. Marcus's expression hardened. My grandfather was called a fraud when he reported these structures. He died with his reputation in tatters. This isn't just about discovery, Sophia. It's about redemption. As he walked away, Sophia noticed how tightly he gripped the jade figurine, his talisman, his proof, his inheritance. What Marcus didn't see was the small crack forming along its base, the ancient stone beginning to yield under the pressure of his ambition. The port town of Porto Verde buzzed with midday activity as Marcus and Sophia navigated the crowded marketplace. Fishermen hawked their morning catch, while merchants sold everything from hand-woven baskets to bootleg American movies. The air hung heavy with humidity and the scent of overripe fruit. Marcus consulted a worn business card. Our guide should be meeting us at Café Ribeiro in 20 minutes. Sophia adjusted her backpack, still uncertain about her role on this expedition. You never mentioned how you found this guide, Diego Suarez. Came highly recommended by the anthropology department at São Paulo University. Marcus stepped around a puddle of suspicious origin. 3 decades of Amazon experience. If anyone can get us where we need to go, it's him. The cafe sat on a corner overlooking the muddy river that would eventually lead them deep into the jungle. As they claimed a table, an elderly woman approached, her dark eyes evaluating them openly. You seek the hidden city, she said in Portuguese. It wasn't a question. Marcus straightened, suddenly alert. Do you know something about it? The woman placed a hand-carved wooden box on their table, her gold bangles jingling softly. My grandfather was a guide for a foreigner many years ago. A man with your eyes. Marcus exchanged glances with Sophia. My grandfather, Edward Hale. The woman nodded. He left this with my family. Said if another came looking for the city, we should give this warning. She opened the box to reveal a small clay pipe, blackened from use. A pipe. Marcus reached for it, but the woman held up her hand. The pipe belonged to the last outsider who found the protected ones before your grandfather. They let him live only because he saved a child from drowning. Her voice lowered. The jungle ahead does not forgive trespassers. Sophia leaned forward. The protected ones, you mean the Mata Verde tribe? That is the name in your books. They have their own name. The woman glanced over her shoulder nervously. Many believe they are extinct. Better for everyone to keep believing this. Marcus finally took the pipe, examining the intricate carvings along its stem. My grandfather's notes mentioned a tribe, but not any danger. Perhaps that is why he returned alive but empty-handed. The woman's gaze hardened. The ruins you seek are under their protection for a reason. What reason? Marcus pressed. Before she could answer, a deep voice interrupted them. Forgive my mother. She tells these stories to all the academics who pass through. The man who approached their table wore the practical clothing of a river guide, but his demeanor suggested more formal education than most locals. He extended his hand. Diego Suarez, you must be Dr. Hale. The old woman muttered something and retreated, leaving the pipe behind. Your mother seems concerned about our destination, Sophia observed. Diego shrugged. She grew up with stories of jungle spirits and ancient curses. Reality is much simpler. Dangerous terrain, hostile wildlife, and occasionally territorial locals. Marcus pocketed the pipe. Then you believe you can get us to these coordinates? Diego studied the satellite map Marcus produced. It's ambitious. The last stretch will be on foot. No navigable rivers reach that far. And we're entering the rainy season. Time constraints, Marcus said. The university wants results before they release the second half of our funding. Diego traced the route with a weathered finger. 2 weeks to reach this point? Another week on foot. Assuming good conditions. He named a price that made Sophia wince. Half now, half upon successful arrival, Marcus countered. Diego laughed. Half now, half when we return to civilization, successful or not. As they negotiated details, Sophia stepped outside to call the department. The connection crackled with static. The guide's mother gave Marcus some kind of warning, she reported quietly. Something about the protected ones. Do we have any additional information on active tribal presence in the region? The academic voice on the other end sounded distant. Nothing confirmed in decades. Satellite imagery suggests possible small settlements, but the canopy conceals too much. And if we do encounter indigenous people, department policy is clear. Document, don't engage. Retreat if contact seems likely. Sophia watched through the window as Marcus animated the potential discovery to Diego, hands gesturing grandly, face alight with anticipation. I don't think retreat is in Dr. Hale's vocabulary, she murmured. That evening, as they finalized preparations in their rented rooms, Sophia noticed Marcus repeatedly taking out the pipe, running his fingers along the carvings, then placing it back in its box. The simple object seemed to both trouble and fascinate him, a talisman and a warning he couldn't decide whether to heed. 4 days into the expedition, the gentle putter of the boat's motor became the only constant in a world increasingly foreign to Marcus and Sophia. The river narrowed as it wound deeper into the Amazon, its banks rising higher on either side, crowned with vegetation so dense it appeared solid. Bromeliads and orchids burst from every surface, their vibrant colors stark against the verdant backdrop. Diego stood at the helm, occasionally consulting a battered GPS unit before adjusting their course. Behind him, 4 local porters maintained the equipment and prepared meals, speaking little but watching the foreign academics with cautious eyes. We should reach the tributary by nightfall, Diego announced over the motor's rumble. After that, 2 more days by water, then we walk. Marcus nodded, busy annotating his grandfather's journal with new observations. Sophia leaned against the railing, camera in hand, documenting the changing landscape. Look there, Diego suddenly called, cutting the engine. In the new silence, the jungle's symphony emerged, insects buzzing, birds calling, the occasional splash of something entering the water. Diego pointed toward a gap in the vegetation where a crude wooden post stood, nearly hidden. River marker? Marcus asked, reaching for his binoculars. Diego shook his head. Boundary marker. We're entering territories rarely visited by outsiders. As they drifted closer, intricate carvings became visible on the post, concentric circles surrounding a stylized hand. Below it, a horizontal line with vertical slashes. It means 5 days' journey, then death, Diego translated, his tone matter-of-fact. Sophia froze, camera halfway to her eye. Indigenous warning sign? Yes, probably Mata Verde, though it doesn't match their typical style. Diego restarted the engine. Many markers like this were placed after logging operations began pushing deeper 20 years ago. Marcus studied the marker, a familiar gleam in his eye. These symbols are consistent with artifacts dated centuries earlier. Cultural continuity suggests we're on the right track. It suggests we're being warned off, Sophia countered. Marcus ignored her, making another note in his journal. That night, they camped on a small islet in the river. After dinner, Diego spread a laminated map across their makeshift table. Tomorrow we enter the Rio Escuro. The waters run darker there. Lots of tannins from decomposing vegetation. Navigation gets trickier and wildlife more dangerous. He traced their planned route with a flashlight beam. 3 of the previous expeditions to this region turned back at this point. One disappeared entirely. What happened to them? Sophia asked. Diego shrugged. Officially? Disease, accidents, equipment failure. Locally? People say the jungle claimed them. And unofficially? Marcus pressed. Diego folded the map carefully. Loggers found some equipment, no bodies. Could have been animals. Could have been tribal defenders. A porter named Paulo approached their circle, setting down a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Found this while collecting firewood. Thought you should see. Inside lay a machete, its blade rusted but still recognizable. The handle bore initials carved into the wood. E.H. Marcus inhaled sharply. Edward Hale, my grandfather's. Sophia examined it without touching. After 60 years in the jungle? The handle should have rotted away, not if it was kept somewhere dry, Diego suggested. And then recently moved. The implication hung heavy in the darkness. We're being watched, Marcus concluded, scanning the jungle's edge, where firelight surrendered to impenetrable shadow. That night, Sophia awoke to rustling sounds outside her tent. Grabbing her flashlight, she cautiously unzipped the entrance. The camp was still, moonlight filtering through the canopy in scattered patches. Near the supply crates, a cloth had been disturbed. Approaching cautiously, she discovered the crate containing Marcus's research equipment had been opened. Nothing appeared missing, but atop his carefully packed notes sat an unfamiliar object, a small woven bracelet of red and black fibers. As she reached for it, a twig snapped in the darkness beyond. Sophia's flashlight beam cut through the night, catching a glimpse of painted skin disappearing into the undergrowth. By morning, tension had settled over the expedition. 2 porters demanded to return, citing bad omens. Diego negotiated with them while Marcus examined the bracelet. It's a warning, Diego finally explained. Red and black together symbolize blood and death in many Amazonian cultures. Marcus pocketed the bracelet. Or it's a test, to see if we respect their signs or press forward anyway. And which are we doing? Sophia asked pointedly. Marcus adjusted his pack, the machete now strapped to his belt. We're proceeding with respect. But we are proceeding, Diego translated to the remaining porters. One more chose to leave, accepting partial payment to guide the other 2 back. We continue with 5 instead of 7, Diego announced. Less equipment, faster pace. As they pushed the boats back into the current, Sophia noticed fresh markings carved into a nearby tree. Not ancient symbols, but a precisely drawn arrow pointing downstream. Beneath it, in what appeared to be charcoal, was the unmistakable impression of a child's handprint. The rain began on their 6th day in the jungle. Not the brief, violent downpours common to the Amazon, but a steady, relentless drizzle that soaked through everything. By the 3rd day of continuous rainfall, even Diego's perpetual calm showed cracks. We need to find higher ground, he announced, studying the swollen river. 2 more days of this, and we'll lose the tributary markers. Their reduced party labored to navigate increasingly treacherous waters. Twice they narrowly avoided submerged logs that could have capsized their boats. The constant moisture caused equipment failures. 2 GPS units stopped working, followed by Marcus's satellite phone. On the 9th day, with visibility reduced to mere yards, Diego finally conceded. We make camp here until conditions improve. They secured the boats and established a miserable outpost on a slight rise that barely qualified as dry land. Canvas tarps provided minimal shelter from the endless rain. That night, Paulo approached Marcus's tent, water streaming from his poncho. Senior Diego asked you to come. There is trouble. Marcus followed through the mud to find Diego crouched over the supply crates, his headlamp illuminating their disturbed contents. Something got into our food stores, Diego said grimly. About half is contaminated or missing. Animals, Marcus suggested. Though the precise damage seemed unlikely for jungle scavengers, Diego's expression remained neutral. The crates were secured with combination locks. The implication hung between them. Someone in their party, or someone who had followed them, had deliberately sabotaged their supplies. We need to take inventory, Marcus decided. Determine how long we can continue. By morning, the situation clarified. With careful rationing, they had provisions for 5 more days. Their original plan had called for 12 days to reach the target coordinates. "We turn back," Diego recommended as they huddled under a tarp, the rain drumming ceaselessly above them. "Resupply at the last village and try again when conditions improve." Marcus paced the small dry space. "That would mean a 2-month delay. The university will pull our funding if we don't show results soon. Better delayed than dead," Sophia interjected, wringing water from her notebook. "The site is only 3 days on foot from here," Marcus countered. "I could continue alone, document the ruins, and rejoin you at the extraction point." "That's suicide," Diego said flatly. "Even experienced guides don't travel alone in this region." The argument continued as Paolo prepared a meager breakfast. When he handed Marcus a tin cup of coffee, something clinked against the metal. Marcus peered into the dark liquid and fished out a small object, a polished stone pendant carved with unfamiliar symbols, threaded on a water-stained cord. "Where did this come from?" Marcus demanded, holding up the dripping pendant. Paolo stepped back, eyes wide. "It was not me, sir. The cup was empty when I filled it." Diego examined the pendant without touching it. "Mataverde craftwork. Recent, not ancient. Another warning?" Sophia asked. "No." Diego's expression darkened. "It's an invitation." The revelation silenced even Marcus temporarily. Finally he asked, "An invitation to what?" "To follow?" Diego nodded toward the pendant. "The symbol means path or journey." Marcus turned the stone over in his palm. "So they don't want us to leave. They want to guide us somewhere, or separate us," Sophia suggested. "Divide and conquer." The debate was rendered moot the following morning. They awoke to find both boats partially submerged, their outboard motors missing. Essential navigation equipment had vanished from secured packs. Even more disturbing, a series of small stone pendants, identical to the one in Marcus's coffee, now formed a line leading away from the river into the dense jungle. Diego and the remaining porter announced their decision within the hour. They would follow the river downstream on foot, seeking help from villages they'd passed earlier. "And us?" Sophia asked, though she already knew Marcus's answer. "The ruins are still our objective," Marcus said, stuffing his waterproof backpack with remaining supplies. "These pendants are leading us there." "Or to a trap," Diego warned. Marcus strapped his grandfather's machete to his belt. "My grandfather found something significant enough that these people have remembered him for generations. I'm not turning back now." Sophia studied the line of pendants disappearing into the undergrowth. "I'll go with him," she finally said. "Academic oversight requires it." Diego shook his head, but provided what supplies he could spare. "If you're not at the extraction point in 8 days, we'll send a search party." The rain finally slackened as Marcus and Sophia watched Diego and Paolo follow the riverbank around a bend. Then, with the strange pendant now hanging around his neck, Marcus turned toward the waiting jungle. "Ready to make history?" he asked Sophia with forced confidence. She adjusted her pack, resignation and determination mingling in her expression. "Ready to document whatever happens next." The first pendant in the trail gleamed dully in the filtered light, beckoning them forward. For 2 days, Marcus and Sophia followed the trail of pendants through jungle so dense they often crawled through vegetation rather than walked. Each stone marker led to the next, sometimes hanging from vines, sometimes placed in the hollow of a tree, always just visible enough to find. The rain had stopped, but humidity clung to them like a second skin. Insects formed clouds around their faces. Their clothing, perpetually damp, began to rot on their bodies. "We should be nearing the river again," Marcus said, consulting his backup compass. The device had been behaving erratically since the previous day, the needle spinning without settling. "According to my calculations, we've been traveling in a wide arc." Sophia didn't respond. She hadn't spoken much since their separation from Diego, conserving energy for the grueling trek. By midday they heard it, the unmistakable sound of rushing water. The pendant trail led them to the edge of a ravine. Below, a river wider than the one they'd left behind cut through the jungle. The opposite bank, perhaps 50 yards distant, rose in a gentle slope. "This must be the Rio Sombra," Marcus said, excitement returning to his voice. My grandfather's notes placed the ruins just beyond it. He pointed to a small clearing on the far side. See how the vegetation pattern changes there? Classic sign of previously cultivated land. Sophia shaded her eyes. How do we cross? Marcus followed the ravine edge, searching for options. 20 minutes later, they found what appeared to be an ancient crossing point. Tree roots had been exposed by countless seasons of erosion, forming a natural staircase to the water's edge. On the opposite bank, a similar formation mirrored it. The water looks calm enough here, Marcus observed. We can wade across. Sophia studied the dark water. It's impossible to judge the depth. I'll test it. Marcus began removing his boots and socks. Marcus, wait. Sophia caught his arm. Something feels wrong. The birds have stopped. He paused, suddenly aware of the unnatural silence. The constant background chorus of the jungle had indeed ceased. Only the sound of water remained. Maybe they're reacting to us, Marcus suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. Sophia scanned the canopy, or to something else. After a tense minute of stillness, birdsong gradually resumed. Marcus continued removing his boots, then secured his backpack higher on his shoulders. I'll go first. Keep to my exact path. He tested the water with one foot. Seems about knee-deep near the edge. Sophia reluctantly prepared to follow, watching as Marcus carefully picked his way into the river. The water reached his mid-thigh as he approached the center, his movements slow against the current. Bottom solid, he called back. Not too slippery. When he reached the midpoint, Sophia entered the water, wincing at its unexpected chill. 20 feet apart, they proceeded with careful steps. The attack came without warning. A surge of water erupted around Marcus as something massive struck him from below. He disappeared beneath the surface, then burst back up with a horrific scream, thrashing wildly. The water around him churned red. Marcus! Sophia screamed, frozen in horror. He reappeared, gasping, clawing toward the far bank. Crocodile! Get back! The predator surfaced beside him, ancient, enormous, its scaled hide like weathered armor. Its jaws clamped onto Marcus's leg with terrible precision. His scream cut through the jungle as he pounded desperately at the creature's snout with his fists. Sophia grabbed for her pack, searching frantically for a weapon. Finding nothing, she snatched a stone from the riverbed and hurled it, striking the crocodile's side without effect. The beast began its death roll, trying to drag Marcus under. Somehow, he managed to grab a protruding root, temporarily halting the crocodile's retreat. Blood clouded the water around them. In that moment of suspended horror, a new sound split the air, a high, ululating cry from the opposite bank. A figure launched from an overhanging branch, arcing through the air with impossible grace. The tribal warrior hit the water feet first, just behind the crocodile. In his hands gleamed a weapon unlike anything Sophia had seen, a spear carved from dark wood, its tip glinting with what appeared to be obsidian and metal fragments. With a practiced motion, the warrior plunged the spear into the crocodile's eye. The beast's jaws reflexively opened as it recoiled in pain. Marcus pulled free, crying out as torn flesh separated from the creature's teeth. The warrior struck again, driving the spear deeper. The crocodile thrashed violently, tail whipping the water into froth. Both men were thrown clear as the wounded predator retreated into deeper water, leaving a crimson trail behind it. Sophia unfroze, splashing toward Marcus, who lay half-submerged near the opposite bank. The warrior reached him first, dragging him onto the shore with powerful arms. Up close, Sophia could see the man's skin covered in intricate designs, not paint, but permanent markings in swirling patterns that followed the contours of his muscular frame. Marcus's leg was a mangled ruin below the knee. The warrior produced a cord from a pouch at his waist and created a tourniquet with swift, practiced movements. His eyes, when they briefly met Sophia's, held neither fear nor hostility, only calm assessment. As Marcus slipped into shock, his hand fell open. The pendant they'd been following tumbled onto the bloody earth, landing beside the warrior's bare foot. The man glanced down, recognition flickering across his face. He lifted his spear, still wet with crocodile blood, and touched its shaft to the pendant. Then, with surprising gentleness, he gathered Marcus into his arms and stood. To Sophia he spoke a single word in a language she didn't recognize, then nodded toward the jungle beyond the clearing. The meaning was clear enough. Follow consciousness returned to Marcus in fragments. First came sound, rhythmic chanting, soft and melodic. Then scent, unfamiliar herbs, smoke, something sweet and medicinal. Pain throbbed distantly, as if belonging to someone else. Finally, his eyes flickered open to a world he couldn't immediately comprehend. He lay on a raised platform of woven materials in a circular structure. Walls of interlaced palm fronds filtered dappled sunlight. Smoke rose lazily from a small central fire pit toward an opening in the peaked roof. Various plants and implements hung from the rafters, bundles of dried herbs, hollow gourds, woven baskets. A soft voice spoke near his head. Marcus turned to see an elderly woman sitting cross-legged beside him. Her face was a topography of deep wrinkles, her hair pure white against skin, darkened by decades of sun. She wore simple garments of natural fiber, adorned with seeds and small feathers. Around her neck hung a string of teeth, some recognizably from jungle predators, others mysteriously human-like. The woman continued speaking in her melodic language, gesturing to his leg. Marcus struggled to look down at himself. His lower body was covered with a light blanket of beaten bark cloth. With effort, he lifted the edge. His mangled leg had been meticulously cleaned and bound with fibrous leaves. A poultice of green paste covered the worst wounds. Though swollen and discolored, the limb appeared intact. The crocodile's teeth had torn flesh, but apparently spared major arteries and bone. "You're fortunate," came Sophia's voice from the doorway. She looked exhausted but unharmed, wearing a simple tunic that matched the style of the old woman's clothing. "Escher says the crocodile's teeth missed your artery by millimeters. You understand her?" Marcus croaked, his throat parched. Sophia entered, carrying a clay cup. "Not exactly. Some words are similar to dialects I've studied. Others I've picked up in the 3 days you've been unconscious." 3 days? Marcus tried to sit up but fell back dizzy. "Drink this," Sophia said, supporting his head while he sipped from the cup. The liquid was bitter but refreshing. "They've been treating your fever with local medicines. Your wound showed signs of infection yesterday, but it's improving now." Marcus's academic instincts surfaced through the fog of pain. "Where exactly are we?" "In the village of the Itakara," Sophia replied. "At least that's what they call themselves. I believe they're the descendants of the civilization you were looking for. Though they're very much alive, not ruins." The old woman, Escher, rose and retrieved a small clay pot from a shelf. As she worked, mixing substances with practiced movements, Sophia continued. "The man who saved you is called Taro. He's something between a protector and a guide for the tribe. He's the only one who regularly ventures beyond their territory." She lowered her voice. "Marcus, they've been watching us since we entered the river system. Every accident, every warning, they were testing us." Isha returned with her clay pot, gesturing for Sophia to help expose Marcus's leg. With gentle fingers, the old healer began removing the previous dressing. "Testing us for what?" Marcus winced as the leaves pulled away from his wound. Worthiness, perhaps. Intentions. Sophia watched Isha work with obvious admiration. "They're incredibly sophisticated, Marcus. Their medical knowledge alone is remarkable. They use fungi and plant compounds I've never seen documented." As if understanding, Escher held up a piece of the removed poultice, pointing to tiny threads of blue running through the green paste. She pantomimed a cutting motion, then intense pain, then sleep. "I think it's an analgesic," Sophia translated. "Natural painkiller." Escher applied fresh medicine to Marcus's wounds, then rebandaged them with new leaves. From around her neck, she removed a small object, a carved wooden whistle shaped like a jungle cat. She placed it beside Marcus's mat, miming that he should blow it if he needed help. After Escher left, Marcus examined the whistle. "Have you seen the rest of the village?" Sophia nodded. "They allowed me limited movement once they determined I wasn't a threat." "It's remarkable, Marcus. Approximately 200 people living in complete harmony with the jungle. Sustainable agriculture, complex social structure, extensive botanical knowledge, the ruins. The lost city, Marcus asked, professional excitement temporarily overriding his pain. Sophia's expression grew cautious. There are stone structures on the village outskirts. They appear ancient, but they're still in use, not abandoned ruins. Marcus, we need to be careful about how we proceed. These people have deliberately remained isolated. They invited us here, Marcus countered, touching his neck where the pendant had hung. They saved my life. Taro saved your life, Sophia corrected. Not everyone in the village agrees with his decision. There's division about our presence. Some believe you should have your memory erased with a plant compound before being returned to the outside world. Marcus absorbed this sobering information. And what does Taro think? He believes you were meant to be here. Sophia glanced toward the doorway. Something about your grandfather. They remember him, Marcus. Before he could ask more questions, the doorway darkened as someone entered. The warrior who had saved him stood silently observing. Up close, Marcus could see that what he'd taken for body paint were actually intricate tattoos covering. Much of the man's skin a living map of swirling patterns that seemed to hold meaning. Beyond mere decoration, Taro approached, his movements fluid and controlled. He studied Marcus with unreadable eyes, then spoke, not in his native tongue, but in halting, accented Portuguese. You heal. Soon walk, he touched his own leg. Then decide, remember or forget. 5 days after regaining consciousness, Marcus took his first painful steps outside the healing hut. Leaning on a smoothly carved walking stick provided by Isha, he emerged into the full reality of the Itakara village. The settlement occupied a natural clearing surrounded by ancient trees whose massive roots created natural boundaries. Approximately 30 structures formed concentric circles around a central plaza. Most were elevated on stilts, protection against seasonal flooding and ground-dwelling predators. Walkways of woven vines connected many of the platforms, creating an intricate network above the forest floor. Children paused in their play to stare at the limping outsider. Women tending cooking fires watched with guarded expressions. A group of men constructing what appeared to be a new dwelling stopped their work, hands instinctively moving toward tools that could double as weapons. Sophia appeared at his side. Easy, she murmured. They're still deciding whether you're a guest or a threat. Marcus nodded, conscious of the weight of eyes upon him. Where's Taro? Hunting. He should return by sundown. Sophia guided him toward a fallen log where they could sit. How's the pain? Manageable. Marcus studied the village's layout with professional interest. The architectural design is remarkable. Notice how the structures are positioned to maximize airflow while maintaining sightlines to all approaches. Always the archaeologist, Sophia remarked with a small smile. Even as a patient, a young boy of perhaps 7 approached cautiously, stopping a few feet away. Unlike the adults, his curiosity seemed to outweigh his caution. He pointed to Marcus's walking stick, then to his own leg, pantomiming a limp. I think he's asking about your injury, Sophia said. Marcus smiled at the child and lifted his tunic to show his bandaged leg. Crocodile, he said, mimicking jaws with his hands. The boy's eyes widened. He ran off, returning moments later with several other children, and something clutched in his hand. A small wooden toy carved into the shape of a crocodile. With dramatic gestures, he acted out the attack, complete with sound effects that needed no translation. Marcus couldn't help laughing at the performance. The children, encouraged, crowded closer. One girl touched his beard with fascination. Another examined his walking stick, comparing it to those used by village elders. Their innocent interest broke the tension. Adults resumed their tasks, though still keeping watchful eyes on the interaction. Marcus felt something shift in the atmosphere, a subtle acceptance, if not yet trust. As the sun dipped lower, Taro returned with 4 other hunters, carrying a wild boar suspended from a pole. The successful hunt was met with celebration. Women emerged from huts with large clay pots. Children gathered firewood. The central plaza transformed for an evening feast. Sophia leaned close to Marcus. This is our opportunity to observe their social structure. Notice how specific individuals take charge of different aspects of the preparation. Indeed, the community operated with practiced efficiency. An elder male oversaw the butchering. Middle-aged women directed food preparation. Younger members fetched ingredients from various storage huts. Throughout it all, Taro moved between groups, his status evident in the deference shown him. During the meal, Marcus and Sophia were seated slightly apart from others, but not excluded. Various members approached, offering choice portions with formal gestures that suggested ritual significance. As night settled, drumming began. The rhythms started simply, then grew increasingly complex. Villagers began to dance, first elders, then younger members. Stories were enacted through movement and chanted narration. "They're showing us their history," Sophia whispered. "Creation myths, by the look of it." Marcus watched, transfixed, as performers depicted the birth of the world, the emergence of their people, and what appeared to be a great migration. The sophistication of the performance, its symbolic language, precise movements, and musical complexity spoke to centuries of cultural refinement. When the dancing concluded, Taro approached them. He carried a rolled object, which he ceremoniously presented to Marcus. It was a map drawn on cured animal skin, not the entire region, but specifically the tribal territory. Landmarks were marked with intricate symbols, waterfalls, caves, distinctive trees. A red circle indicated their current location. Most significantly, a section of the map showed stone formations that matched the lost city Marcus had sought. "Tomorrow," Taro said in his limited Portuguese, pointing from Marcus to the stone formation symbols. "You strong enough?" "I show." After Taro departed, Sophia studied Marcus's expression in the firelight. "This is unprecedented. They're deliberately sharing knowledge that they've kept hidden for generations." Marcus carefully re-rolled the map. "The question is why?" Later, in the guest hut assigned to them, Marcus removed his grandfather's journal from Sophia's pack. Though water-damaged, most of the pages remained legible. He found the entry he sought, a rough sketch his grandfather had made of symbols seen on stone pillars. The patterns matched decorative elements they'd observed throughout the village. "He was here," Marcus whispered. "He found them, just as I believed. Then why didn't he tell the world?" Sophia asked the essential question. Marcus had no answer, but as he drifted to sleep, his dreams were troubled by images of his grandfather standing at a crossroads, deliberately turning away from fame and recognition, walking instead into silence. Morning brought a changed atmosphere in the village. As Marcus emerged from the guest hut, he found a small delegation waiting: Taro, Escher the healer, and 3 elders he hadn't formally met. Their expressions carried a solemn purpose that made him instinctively straighten, despite his injured leg. Sophia joined him, hair still damp from bathing in the stream where the women had shown her to wash. She immediately sensed the gravity of the moment and stood quietly beside him. Taro stepped forward, carrying a bundle wrapped in leaves. With ceremonial deliberation, he unwrapped it to reveal a clay bowl containing a dark liquid. The pungent aroma reached Marcus, earthy, bitter, with undertones of something he couldn't identify. "Ayamote," Taro said, offering the bowl. When Marcus hesitated, Taro explained in his limited Portuguese. "Drink, see truth." "Ancestors decide," Sophia leaned close. "I think it's a psychoactive preparation. Many Amazonian tribes use similar substances for spiritual rituals." Marcus studied the faces watching him. "And if I refuse?" One of the elders, a man whose elaborate tattoos suggested high status, spoke rapidly to Taro, who translated haltingly, "No refuse. No see sacred stones." The meaning was clear. This ritual was a prerequisite to being shown the archaeological site Marcus desperately wanted to document. His academic instincts warred with caution. "Is it dangerous?" he asked Sophia. She shrugged slightly. "They wouldn't have saved your life just to poison you now." With a deep breath, Marcus accepted the bowl. The liquid was bitter beyond description, causing him to shudder involuntarily. Escher stepped forward, taking the empty bowl and guiding Marcus to sit on a prepared mat in the center of the gathering space. "What happens now?" he asked. Already feeling a strange lightness spreading through his limbs, Taro sat cross-legged before him. "Now listen. Ancestors speak." The effects intensified rapidly. Colors became vibrant, sounds crystal clear. The boundaries between objects blurred and shifted. Marcus felt simultaneously untethered from his body and intensely present. Taro began speaking, not in halting Portuguese, but in fluent English that shocked Marcus through his altered state. "Your grandfather came as you did, seeking knowledge for his world." Taro's voice seemed to emanate not just from his mouth, but from the air itself. He found more than he sought. Visions flooded Marcus's consciousness. His grandfather, younger than in any photo he'd seen, being led through the village. The same stone formations appearing on the horizon. Ancient texts being shown to the eager academic. "He proved himself during the Great Fever," Taro continued, "when sickness came from outside, killing many. Your grandfather used his medicine to save children. He earned the right to know our secrets." The vision shifted to his grandfather, working alongside Escher, much younger but recognizable, treating lines of feverish villages. But when he learned our history, he made a choice. Taro's eyes held Marcus's. "The same choice you must make." The vision showed Edward Hale kneeling before a stone altar, receiving a clay medallion identical to one Marcus had seen worn by the tribal elders. Then his grandfather burning pages of notes, watching them turn to ash with tears streaming down his face. "The world outside hungers always for more," Taro said. "Knowledge becomes power. Power becomes destruction. Your grandfather chose protection over recognition. He returned to your world, bearing only the memory of what he had witnessed, not its proof." Marcus struggled to form words through the haze of the Ayamote. But he was called a fraud. His reputation destroyed. "He knew this would happen," Taro replied simply. "He chose it." As the visions began to fade, Taro placed something in Marcus's hand, a clay medallion. Not ancient, but newly made, the clay still slightly soft. On it was imprinted the same symbol that had marked the pendants that led them to the river crossing. "Your blood now flows in our river," Taro said. "Your life continues through our medicine. The crocodile took your flesh, but gave you choice." He closed Marcus's fingers around the medallion. "Wear this. For 7 days, you may move freely among us, learn what you seek. Then decide, remember, or forget." The effects of the Ayamote gradually subsided, leaving Marcus exhausted but clear-headed. Sophia helped him back to their hut, the medallion clutched tightly in his palm. "You were in a trance for hours," she told him. "Taro spoke to you the entire time, but in their language, not English or Portuguese. What did you experience?" Marcus described the visions, the revelation about his grandfather, and the choice presented to him. Sophia listened with increasing concern. "They're asking you to make the same decision your grandfather did. Conceal their existence from the outside world." She clarified, "Apparently." Marcus studied the medallion. The clay had hardened completely now, the symbol permanently etched. "The question is why they're showing us anything at all. Why not simply keep us away like they have with others?" Sophia had no answer, but as darkness fell, she made an observation that chilled them both. "The extraction date Diego set is in 12 days. If we miss it, no one will look for us where we actually are." Marcus finished her thought. "They'll search along the original route, nowhere near this village." The medallion seemed heavier in his hand as Marcus confronted the reality of their situation. The tribe's hospitality might easily become captivity with a single decision. And yet the archaeological treasure trove surrounding them was beyond his wildest professional dreams. 7 days to learn everything I can," he murmured, slipping the medallion over his head. "Then the hardest choice of my life." Dawn, on the 3rd day of Marcus's 7, found him sitting outside the healing hut, sketching the village layout in a notebook Sophia had salvaged from their equipment. His leg throbbed dully, but improved enough to allow short walks with his carved staff. He had spent the previous days methodically documenting everything he could: architecture, social practices, agricultural techniques. "You should be resting," Escher scolded as she emerged from her hut. Despite language barriers, the elderly healer had developed a grandmotherly concern for her patient, communicating through a mix of gestures and the few words they'd established in common. "Work helps me heal," Marcus replied with a smile, tapping his notebook. He'd discovered that sketching village life disarmed suspicions more effectively than photography would have. The act of drawing attracted curious onlookers, creating opportunities for interaction. Escher shook her head, but seemed pleased by his recovery. She checked his bandages, applied fresh medicine, then pointed toward the village center where activity was increasing. A hunting party was preparing to depart. Darrow, bare-chested despite the morning chill, supervised the distribution of weapons. Seeing Marcus, he approached with his characteristic fluid grace. "Today you come," he said in Portuguese. "Watch, learn." Marcus glanced at his leg doubtfully. "Not hunt," Darrow clarified. "Watch from high place." He pointed to a platform built in a massive tree overlooking what appeared to be a game trail. Marcus agreed eagerly. Any chance to observe tribal practices firsthand was valuable research. Sophia emerged from their hut to find him preparing to leave. "Are you sure that's wise?" she asked, eyeing his leg. "I'll be fine." "What about you?" "The women have invited me to join a gathering expedition." Sophia had more readily integrated with the tribe, her anthropological training and natural empathy opening doors. "They're collecting medicinal plants. I might identify species unknown to Western pharmacology." As they parted ways, Marcus felt a pang of professional jealousy. Sophia's gentler approach was yielding insights he couldn't access. The women's knowledge, particularly their botanical expertise, represented invaluable ethnographic data. Darrow led Marcus through the jungle with patient consideration for his injured leg. The observation platform, when they reached it, proved sturdier than it appeared from a distance, a carefully engineered structure that could support several adults. "We wait. Watch. No speak," Darrow instructed as they settled onto woven mats. Below, two young hunters positioned themselves at strategic points along the trail, while others disappeared deeper into the forest. Hours passed in silence. Marcus observed how Darrow's attention never wavered, his awareness encompassing every rustle and bird call. Eventually the older man spoke quietly. "Your grandfather watched same way." "Good eyes, quiet spirit, you knew him well?" Marcus asked, seizing the rare opportunity for conversation. "I was young. He taught me English words. I taught him forest ways." Darrow's expression remained impassive. "He understood what others from outside world do not." "What's that?" "Knowledge has price. Must be earned. Must be worthy." Before Marcus could press further, Darrow held up a hand for silence. Below, the faint sound of beaters driving game toward them carried through the trees. Within minutes, a small herd of peccaries trotted into view. The hidden hunters emerged precisely when the animals reached the optimal position. Their spears found targets with devastating accuracy. The hunt's efficiency impressed Marcus as much as any technology from his world. The tribe took only what was needed, killed cleanly, and utilized every part of the animals. Nothing wasted, nothing taken for sport. As they helped transport the game back to the village, Darrow led Marcus on a detour. They stopped at a small, hidden clearing, dominated by an enormous kapok tree. At its base lay an arrangement of stones that made Marcus's pulse quicken. Clearly human-made, clearly ancient. Darrow knelt, brushing aside leaves to reveal a stone tablet approximately 2 feet square. Carved into its surface was a map of stars, not random decorations, but precise celestial positions. "Skywriting," Darrow explained. "Shows when plant medicine works, when hunt best, when child should be born." Marcus studied the astronomical chart with growing excitement. The sophistication suggested knowledge that should have been beyond a culture isolated from global scientific development. Some constellations he recognized, others were unfamiliar groupings. "May I?" he asked, reaching for his notebook. Taro considered, then nodded. As Marcus sketched, Taro removed something from a pouch at his waist, a smooth stone disc about 3 inches in diameter. Its surface was etched with the same celestial patterns as the tablet, but with an additional outer ring containing symbols Marcus didn't recognize. "Star Reader," Taro explained, demonstrating how the disc rotated against an outer edge. "Positions change with seasons. Tells when to plant, when to harvest, when waters rise." Marcus recognized it immediately, a sophisticated astronomical calculator. Similar in function to ancient devices found in other parts of the world, but unique in design. Its existence challenged conventional archaeological understanding of isolated Amazonian cultures. "How old is this?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Older than oldest stories," Taro replied. He hesitated, then added, "Your grandfather saw this also." "And he said nothing," Marcus murmured, understanding growing. Such a discovery would have restored his grandfather's reputation instantly, yet he had chosen silence. Taro placed the star disk in Marcus's hands. "Keep until night. Learn how it works. Return tomorrow." The unexpected trust rendered Marcus momentarily speechless. This wasn't merely an artifact, it was a cultural treasure, a scientific instrument that proved the tribe's astronomical knowledge extended back generations. "I'll be careful with it," he finally managed. Taro's expression remained enigmatic. Not question of careful, question of worthy. Dawn, on the 3rd day of Marcus's 7, found him sitting outside the healing hut, sketching the village layout in a notebook Sophia had salvaged from their equipment. His leg throbbed dully, but improved enough to allow short walks with his carved staff. He had spent the previous days methodically documenting everything he could: architecture, social practices, agricultural techniques. "You should be resting," Esha scolded as she emerged from her hut. Despite language barriers, the elderly healer had developed a grandmotherly concern for her patient, communicating through a mix of gestures and the few words they'd established in common. "Work helps me heal," Marcus replied with a smile, tapping his notebook. He'd discovered that sketching village life disarmed suspicions more effectively than photography would have. The act of drawing attracted curious onlookers, creating opportunities for interaction. Esha shook her head, but seemed pleased by his recovery. She checked his bandages, applied fresh medicine, then pointed toward the village center where activity was increasing. A hunting party was preparing to depart. Taro, bare-chested despite the morning chill, supervised the distribution of weapons. Seeing Marcus, he approached with his characteristic fluid grace. "Today you come," he said in Portuguese. "Watch, learn." Marcus glanced at his leg doubtfully. "Not hunt," Taro clarified. "Watch from high place." He pointed to a platform built in a massive tree, overlooking what appeared to be a game trail. Marcus agreed eagerly. Any chance to observe tribal practices firsthand was valuable research. Sophia emerged from their hut to find him preparing to leave. "Are you sure that's wise?" she asked, eyeing his leg. "I'll be fine." "What about you?" "The women have invited me to join a gathering expedition." Sophia had more readily integrated with the tribe, her anthropological training and natural empathy opening doors. "They're collecting medicinal plants. I might identify species unknown to Western pharmacology." As they parted ways, Marcus felt a pang of professional jealousy. Sophia's gentler approach was yielding insights he couldn't access. The women's knowledge, particularly their botanical expertise, represented invaluable ethnographic data. Taro led Marcus through the jungle with patient consideration for his injured leg. The observation platform, when they reached it, proved sturdier than it appeared from a distance, a carefully engineered structure that could support several adults. "We wait. Watch. No speak," Taro instructed as they settled onto woven mats. Below, 2 young hunters positioned themselves at strategic points along the trail, while others disappeared deeper into the forest. Hours passed in silence. Marcus observed how Taro's attention never wavered, his awareness encompassing every rustle and bird call. Eventually, the older man spoke quietly. "Your grandfather watched same way. Good eyes, quiet spirit. You knew him well?" Marcus asked, seizing the rare opportunity for conversation. "I was young. He taught me English words. I taught him forest ways." Taro's expression remained impassive. He understood what others from outside world do not. "What's that?" "Knowledge has price. Must be earned. Must be worthy." Before Marcus could press further, Taro held up a hand for silence. Below, the faint sound of beaters driving game toward them carried through the trees. Within minutes, a small herd of peccaries trotted into view. The hidden hunters emerged precisely when the animals reached the optimal position. Their spears found targets with devastating accuracy. The hunt's efficiency impressed Marcus as much as any technology from his world. The tribe took only what was needed, killed cleanly, and utilized every part of the animals. Nothing wasted, nothing taken for sport. As they helped transport the game back to the village, Taro led Marcus on a detour. They stopped at a small hidden clearing dominated by an enormous kapok tree. At its base lay an arrangement of stones that made Marcus's pulse quicken. Clearly human-made, clearly ancient. Taro knelt, brushing aside leaves to reveal a stone tablet approximately 2 feet square. Carved into its surface was a map of stars, not random decorations, but precise celestial positions. "Sky writing," Taro explained, "shows when plant medicine works, when hunt best. When child should be born?" Marcus studied the astronomical chart with growing excitement. The sophistication suggested knowledge that should have been beyond a culture isolated from global scientific development. Some constellations he recognized, others were unfamiliar groupings. "May I?" he asked, reaching for his notebook. Taro considered, then nodded. As Marcus sketched, Taro removed something from a pouch at his waist, a smooth stone disc about 3 inches in diameter. Its surface was etched with the same celestial patterns as the tablet, but with an additional outer ring containing symbols Marcus didn't recognize. "Star reader," Taro explained, demonstrating how the disc rotated against an outer edge. "Positions change with seasons. Tells when to plant, when to harvest, when waters rise." Marcus recognized it immediately, a sophisticated astronomical calculator. Similar in function to ancient devices found in other parts of the world, but unique in design. Its existence challenged conventional archaeological understanding of isolated Amazonian cultures. "How old is this?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Older than oldest stories," Taro replied. He hesitated, then added, "Your grandfather saw this also." "And he said nothing," Marcus murmured, understanding growing. Such a discovery would have restored his grandfather's reputation instantly, yet he had chosen silence. Taro placed the star disk in Marcus's hands. "Keep until night. Learn how it works. Return tomorrow." The unexpected trust rendered Marcus momentarily speechless. This wasn't merely an artifact, it was a cultural treasure, a scientific instrument that proved the tribe's astronomical knowledge extended back generations. "I'll be careful with it," he finally managed. Taro's expression remained enigmatic. Not question of careful, question of worthy. Morning brought preparation for the journey to the neighboring village. Marcus was surprised to find Sophia wouldn't accompany them. "The women have invited me to a gathering ritual," she explained. "It's restricted to females, an opportunity I can't pass up." She lowered her voice. "Besides, they trust us more if we separate occasionally. Shows we're not plotting together." Marcus couldn't argue with her logic. Taro arrived with 2 other men, who were introduced as Ketu and Naji. They carried minimal supplies, water gourds, small pouches of food, and weapons. Before departing, Escher approached with a wooden bowl containing a reddish paste. "For journey," Taro translated, as she gestured for Marcus to remove his shirt. Marcus complied hesitantly. Escher applied the paste to his chest, shoulders, and face in precise patterns. The substance dried quickly, leaving his skin decorated with designs similar to those worn by his companions. "What is this for?" Marcus asked, catching his reflection in a water bowl. "Protection," Taro replied simply. "Forest knows you now." They travelled swiftly despite accommodating Marcus's injured leg. The path they followed would have been invisible to untrained eyes. Subtle markers in bent branches, particular stones, notches in tree bark. Occasionally they stopped while Ketu rearranged these signs or added new ones. "Trail messages," Taro explained, telling who passed, how many, where going. 3 hours into their journey, they paused beside a massive fallen tree. While Marcus rested, Naji climbed a neighboring tree with monkey-like agility, disappearing into the canopy. He returned minutes later, carrying what appeared to be a small leather pouch attached to a branch. "Message post," Taro translated, as Naji extracted a collection of knotted cords from the pouch. "News from other villages." The men studied the knotted sequences intently, occasionally conferring in low voices. Their expressions grew serious. "Problem?" Marcus asked. Taro hesitated before answering. "Outsiders seen. North Territory. With machines." "What kind of machines?" "That cut trees. That dig earth." Taro's normally impassive face showed concern. "Coming closer each moon." They continued more cautiously, Ketu now ranging ahead as scout. By midday, they reached what appeared to be a small river, though its banks suggested it swelled considerably during rainy seasons. Instead of crossing, they followed upstream for another hour until they reached a massive strangler fig, whose aerial roots formed a natural bridge. As they carefully traversed this living structure, Marcus glimpsed movement on the opposite bank, shadowy figures tracking their progress. Taro made a distinctive bird call that was immediately answered from the forest. The shadows materialized into warriors with bows drawn, faces suspicious. Taro spoke rapidly in a dialect slightly different from what Marcus had heard in their village. He gestured to Marcus's decorated skin and medallion. After tense evaluation, the warriors lowered their weapons and escorted them into the forest. This second village differed from Taro's. Built entirely at ground level, its structures nestled within the buttress roots of enormous trees, nearly invisible until one stood among them. The population appeared smaller, perhaps 50 individuals, with a higher proportion of elderly members. They were brought before a woman whose silver hair and elaborately tattooed skin denoted significant status. She studied Marcus with penetrating eyes that missed nothing: his injured leg, his medallion, the ritual paint on his skin. After conferring with Taro, she gestured for Marcus to approach. From around her neck, she removed what appeared to be a carved bone whistle. Without explanation, she placed it against her lips and blew. No sound reached Marcus's ears, yet all around them birds took flight in synchronized patterns. The elder handed the whistle to Marcus, indicating he should try. When he blew, nothing happened. No bird response, no detectable sound. The elder nodded as if confirming something, then spoke to Taro. "She says your breath not yet has jungle in it," Taro translated. "Still carries city sound." The elder addressed Marcus directly. Though he couldn't understand her words, her intent became clear as she pressed her palm against his chest, directly over his heart. Then, to his surprise, she reached for his injured leg, unwrapping the bandages despite his instinctive resistance. The wound, while healing, still looked grotesque, puckered tooth marks forming a crescent of angry red tissue. The elder examined it carefully, then called for something. A young girl approached with a wooden box adorned with intricate carvings of crocodiles. From the box, the elder removed a preserved crocodile tooth, yellowed with age. She held it next to Marcus's wound, nodding at the perfect match in size and shape. Then, to his astonishment, she pressed the tooth directly into the deepest part of his healing wound. Marcus gasped in pain. Taro restrained him with a firm grip. "Necessary," he said quietly. "Powerful medicine. Accept," the elder chanted as she worked, pressing the tooth fully into the wound until it disappeared beneath the healing flesh. Then she applied a different poultice than Escher had used, wrapping the leg with fresh bandages. The burning sensation gradually transformed into a strange warmth that spread up Marcus's leg. What did she do? He asked when they were finally led to a dwelling for rest. Taro's expression was solemn. Old magic. Crocodile took your flesh. Now you take Crocodile's strength. He touched his own chest, where elaborate tattoos depicted predator teeth. All warriors carry tooth of what tried to kill them. Makes bond. Makes strength. Marcus lay back, feeling the strange warmth continuing to spread through his body. And the whistle! Why couldn't I make it work? Silent whistle speaks to jungle creatures. Only those accepted by forest can use. Taro's expression softened slightly. Practice. Maybe tomorrow, birds hear you. The return journey to Taro's village took a different route, longer, but revealing new aspects of the territory. They visited a sacred waterfall where mineral deposits had created spectacular blue terraces. Marcus was shown ancient cave paintings depicting what appeared to be first contact with European explorers centuries ago. At each site, Taro emphasized the same message. The Itakara had deliberately remained hidden while observing the outside world's encroachment. Marcus's leg improved dramatically following the elder's treatment. The constant burning had subsided, replaced by occasional tingling sensations that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his surroundings. More strangely, he found himself increasingly sensitive to subtle changes in the forest, shifts in animal sounds, variations in humidity, the approach of weather changes. They were less than an hour from Taro's village when Ketu, scouting ahead, returned with alarming news. He spoke rapidly to Taro, whose normally impassive expression darkened. "What's happened?" Marcus asked. "Strangers in territory," Taro replied tersely. "With machines, near village. They abandoned the trail, moving instead through dense underbrush." Taro's manner had transformed completely. Gone was the patient guide, replaced by a predatory vigilance that reminded Marcus forcefully that this man had unflinchingly battled a crocodile. As they neared the village perimeter, Taro signaled for absolute silence. He led Marcus to a concealed observation point within a dense thicket. Below them, at the edge of a small clearing, stood 3 men in khaki clothing. Their equipment was immediately recognizable to Marcus: survey instruments, GPS units, core sampling tools. "Resource exploration team," Marcus whispered. "Looking for mineral deposits?" One man consulted a tablet computer, comparing readings with a map. With a shock of recognition, Marcus realized it was an enhanced version of his own research maps, the very documents he'd submitted to the university to secure expedition funding. The men spoke Portuguese with Brazilian accents. The archaeologist's coordinates matched the geological prediction models perfectly, said the one with the tablet. "High probability of rare earth elements throughout this zone. Any sign of Hale or his assistant?" asked another, adjusting a satellite phone. "Nothing yet. The search team found their last camp by the river, but the trail goes cold there. Keep looking. The company wants them found before they make contact with any locals. These surveys need to stay quiet until the permits are secured." Marcus felt sick. The university expedition, his lifelong dream of archaeological discovery, had apparently been cover for resource exploration. His research, his grandfather's legacy, had been weaponized to locate valuable minerals. Taro touched his arm, indicating they should retreat. Once at safe distance, Marcus struggled to explain what he'd learned. "They use my maps. My research." He fought to find the right words in Portuguese. "Company looking for valuable minerals. Using me to find location." Taro's expression revealed he understood perfectly. "Why we trust few outsiders. Knowledge becomes weapon." "I didn't know," Marcus insisted. "They lied to me too." They circled wide around the survey team, approaching the village from the opposite direction. As they entered the perimeter, they found the community in controlled alert. Warriors positioned strategically, women and children gathered in central structures. Sophia rushed to meet them, relief evident. "Thank God you're back." "There are outsiders. We saw them," Marcus cut her off. "Using survey equipment. They have my research maps." Her expression fell. "There's more." She led them to their guest hut where she retrieved her satellite phone. 1. Of the few pieces of equipment that had survived their journey, I climbed to high ground and got a signal, she explained. Checked my university email. There was a message mistakenly copied to me. She handed him the phone. It was intended for the department chair only. The email displayed on the small screen confirmed Marcus's worst fears. The university's geology department had partnered with a mining corporation. Marcus's archaeological research had been funded specifically to provide cover for identifying mineral deposits in protected territories. His academic credentials gave them access to regions otherwise restricted. Most damning was a line near the end. Hale's obsession with his grandfather's discredited research makes him ideal, too focused on archaeological vindication to question our geological interest in the region. They used me, Marcus whispered. Sophia nodded grimly. There's a reason they paired me with you. I was supposed to report if you found anything of geological significance. Did you? Of course not. Once I realized what was happening, I fed them misleading information. Her expression hardened. I'm an anthropologist, Marcus. My life's work is protecting indigenous cultures, not exploiting them. Their conversation was interrupted by commotion at the village edge. Two warriors escorted someone toward the central area, a figure in mud-stained expedition clothing, exhausted but immediately recognizable. Diego? Marcus stared in disbelief. Their former guide looked terrible, thin, scratched, limping worse than Marcus. When he saw them, naked relief washed over his face. Thank God, he gasped. I've been searching for weeks. His expression turned urgent. You need to leave immediately. There's a mining operation mobilizing. They're using your research, Marcus. The university sold it to them. We know, Sophia said. Diego shook his head. No, you don't understand. They're not just exploring. He pulled a crumpled document from his pocket, a folded corporate prospectus with satellite images and development plans. They're already moving equipment into the region. Heavy machinery. They plan to dam the river and strip mine the entire watershed. The tribal council gathered as darkness fell. Elders sat in a semicircle around the central fire, their faces grave in the flickering light. Marcus, Sophia, and Diego had been positioned directly across from them, not as prisoners, but clearly as the focus of judgment. Taro stood between the two groups, translating the proceedings. The head elder, a man whose elaborate facial tattoos spoke of high status, addressed Marcus directly. He asks how you bring this danger to their lands. Taro translated. Marcus struggled with the devastating weight of responsibility. Tell him I was deceived. I didn't know my research was being used this way. As Taro conveyed this, murmurs rippled through the assembled tribe. The elder's response was swift and cutting. He says ignorance of betrayal does not erase its consequences. Sophia leaned forward. Ask him if they've faced such threats before. After translation, the elder nodded slowly. He spoke at length, Taro conveying his words in carefully measured phrases. Many times outsiders have come. For gold, for wood, for land. Each time the Itakara moved deeper into forest. But now, nowhere left to retreat. These machines will poison rivers all tribes depend on. Diego, who had been silent, finally spoke. The mining operation has government backing. They're calling it strategic resource development. Once they dam the river, the flooding will destroy half the tribal territories on that map you showed us. Marcus felt physically ill as the full implications became clear. His lifelong quest to find a lost civilization would instead destroy a living one. An older woman, not Esha, but of similar status, addressed the council next, speaking with passionate intensity. Several elders nodded in agreement. What is she saying? Marcus asked. Taro's expression darkened. She says time for hiding is finished. Some believe they should attack survey teams, drive outsiders away with fear. That would be suicide, Sophia interjected. The company would bring in armed security, maybe even military support. After this was translated, another elder responded by pointing directly at the three outsiders. Taro hesitated before translating. He suggests using you as hostages. Force company to leave. Diego shifted uncomfortably. I've seen how these corporations operate. They'd use that as justification for a full security operation. Everyone here would be classified as hostiles. The debate continued, growing more heated. Finally, Marcus stood, waiting for attention to focus on him. When the council quieted, he spoke with deliberate clarity, pausing to allow Taro to translate. "This is my fault. My research led them here. My university betrayed not just me, but all of you." He took a deep breath. "But I can help make this right." From his pocket, Marcus withdrew a folded paper that had been delivered to their hut just before the council. He'd had barely enough time to read it, let alone process its implications. Now he unfolded it carefully, revealing the university letterhead. "This arrived with Diego. It's from my department chair." He handed it to Sophia to confirm. "They're worried about me. They want me to contact them immediately to coordinate extraction. They claim the mining operation is unrelated to my research." Sophia scanned the document, her expression hardening. "They're covering their tracks. Classic plausible deniability." Marcus turned back to the council. "This letter proves they're lying. Combined with the prospectus Diego brought and Sophia's emails, we have evidence of their deception." He pointed to the corporate documents. "These show they're violating protected indigenous territories. Under international law, this development would be illegal." Diego looked skeptical. "Laws don't always matter in the Amazon. Money speaks louder, but publicity does matter," Marcus countered. "These companies care about their international image. If evidence of their plans leaked to global media and indigenous rights organizations..." He let the implication hang. The council conferred among themselves after this was translated. Finally, the head elder posed a direct question to Marcus. He asks what you would sacrifice to help them. Taro translated. Marcus didn't hesitate. "Everything. My career, my research, my reputation." He touched the medallion still hanging around his neck. "I understand now what my grandfather chose and why." The elder studied him for a long moment, then spoke again. "He says words are wind. Actions prove truth." From his robe, the elder withdrew an object that made Marcus's breath catch, a battered leather-bound journal with a familiar monogram. H. Edward Hale, his grandfather's lost field journal. The elder opened it to reveal pages of meticulous notes, detailed drawings and maps, far more comprehensive than the partial journal that had inspired Marcus's expedition. Then, with deliberate ceremony, he tore a page from the journal and held it to the flame. The paper curled and blackened, decades of irreplaceable research reduced to ash in seconds. The message was unmistakable. Taro's voice was quiet as he translated the elder's next words. "Your grandfather destroyed his own work to protect our people. Now council asks, would you do same?" Marcus stared at the journal, the academic treasure he had spent his career pursuing. Complete, it would guarantee his professional legacy. Published, it would revolutionize understanding of pre-Columbian Amazon civilizations, and it would expose the Itakara to the very forces now threatening them. The elder extended the journal toward Marcus. The firelight caught the weathered leather, the faded ink, history and knowledge balanced in his palm. "Choose," Taro translated simply. Marcus looked from the journal to the expectant faces surrounding him. The weight of history, both academic and tribal, pressed down upon his shoulders. Without hesitation, he took the journal and placed it in the fire himself. "I make the same choice my grandfather made," he said, as pages blackened and curled. "Some knowledge isn't meant for exploitation." A collective exhalation passed through the council. Taro's normally impassive face showed a flicker of approval. The head elder nodded once, decisively. "But burning this solves nothing," Marcus continued, withdrawing the journal before it was completely destroyed. "The mining company doesn't need my research anymore. They've already identified the mineral deposits. We need a different strategy." Through the night, a plan took shape. By dawn, they had formulated a multi-pronged approach, combining traditional tribal knowledge with modern tactics. As the council dispersed, Taro led Marcus, Sophia, and Diego to a structure they hadn't previously been allowed to enter, a long building near the village center. Inside, they found not tribal artifacts, but modern equipment, solar-powered radio gear, satellite communications, even a weather-sealed laptop. Monitoring post, Taro explained, seeing their shock. We watch outside world. Have watchers in cities too. You've been observing civilization while remaining hidden from it, Sophia realized. For how long? Many generations. Taro powered up the equipment with practiced ease. Knowledge flows one direction. Safer this way. Diego examined the setup with professional appreciation. This explains how you've avoided development projects, maintained territorial boundaries. Until now, Marcus added grimly. Taro opened a locked chest and removed a flat object wrapped in protective oilcloth. He unwrapped it carefully to reveal a tablet computer, not modern, but perhaps only a few years old. Your grandfather's last gift, he explained, powering it on. Updated by trusted outsiders since. The tablet contained a comprehensive database of legal precedents involving indigenous land rights, contact information for environmental organizations, and detailed maps of the entire watershed with territorial boundaries clearly marked. This is amazing, Sophia said, scrolling through the information. With this evidence and the right contacts, we could mount a legal challenge to the mining operation. Legal challenges take time, Diego countered. The company will move faster. Then we need to slow them down, Marcus said. He turned to Taro. The survey team we saw, they're the advance party, gathering final data before heavy equipment arrives. If their survey is delayed or their data compromised, Taro nodded. We can do this. But not enough. No, but it buys time for the second part of our plan. Marcus pointed to the communications equipment. Can we reach the outside world from here? Limited. Better from city contact. We need to get Sophia to a secure location where she can release evidence of the illegal operation to international media and environmental groups. Marcus turned to Diego. Can you get her safely to Manaus? Diego considered. There's a research station 3 days' journey downriver. Scientists there who would help. They have satellite communications, legal contacts. What about you? Sophia asked Marcus. I'm staying here. His hand went to his leg, where beneath the healing wound, the crocodile tooth had become part of him. I need to help the Itakara prepare, and... He hesitated. There's something at the mining camp I need to find. Preparations moved swiftly. Warriors were dispatched to neighboring villages, spreading word of the threat and coordinating defensive measures. Sophia gathered evidence, copying files from the tablet, securing affidavits from tribal leaders that Taro translated and transcribed. As dusk approached, Taro brought Marcus to a secluded hut at the village edge. Inside, several elders waited, including Esha. A fire burned in the central pit, but instead of wood, it consumed a mixture of resins that released aromatic blue smoke. Final preparation, Taro explained. For your protection, for your strength. The elders directed Marcus to remove his shirt and sit beside the fire. Esha approached with a wooden box intricately carved with animal figures. From it, she removed a curved bone needle and small pots of colored pigments. What is this? Marcus asked, though he already suspected. Warrior marks, Taro replied. Protection symbols. He displayed his own elaborate chest tattoos. Designs channel jungle strength. Without them, you face mining people with no protection. Marcus understood what was being offered. Not just decoration, but formal acceptance. A permanent connection to the tribe. These are sacred, he said. I haven't earned them. Taro translated this objection to the elders. Isha responded by placing her hand directly over the wound where the crocodile tooth had been embedded. She says jungle already marked you inside, Taro translated. These marks just show outside what is already true. As Marcus considered, Esha opened another compartment in the box. Inside lay an object that made him gasp. A ceremonial knife with a handle of polished wood and a blade crafted from multiple materials, stone, bone, and most surprisingly, metal. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, combining traditional techniques with what appeared to be repurposed modern materials. Blade of ancestors, Taro said reverently. Made by first Itakara to meet outsiders. Metal taken from European ship. Knowledge of worlds combined. Escher lifted the knife, making it catch the firelight. Then with ceremonial deliberation, she offered it to Marcus. Taro will wear paint to look like outsiders, she said through Taro's translation. You must wear marks to look like Itakara. Each journey different direction. Same purpose. Marcus accepted the knife, feeling the weight of centuries of tribal history in his palm. With this gesture, they were entrusting him not just with a sacred artifact, but with their future. By dawn, Marcus's transformation was complete. Intricate patterns covered his chest and arms. Not the full ceremonial tattoos of a tribal warrior, but protective symbols deemed essential for the mission ahead. The designs still stung, the natural pigments working their way beneath his skin. Sophia barely recognized him when they met to finalize plans. They suit you, she said, studying the patterns with anthropological interest. These match Taro's chest markings, guardian symbols if I'm reading them correctly. Marcus nodded, surprised at how natural the markings felt. Taro says they'll help me move through the jungle undetected. Diego entered, carrying newly prepared packs. We should leave within the hour. The survey team's satellite phone transmissions suggest they're expecting reinforcements soon. They spread a crude map drawn on bark cloth. 3 locations were marked: the village, the mining camp 5 miles north, and the research station that was Sophia and Diego's destination. If all goes well, we'll reach the station in 3 days, Diego explained. Professor Mendez there has connections to indigenous rights organizations. Once Sophia transmits the evidence, companies involved will face immediate scrutiny and legal injunctions, Sophia added. But that still leaves you alone at the mining camp. What exactly are you hoping to find there? Marcus hesitated. The company needs my research to justify their presence in protected territory. They're using my academic credentials to legitimize the operation. I need to find whatever documentation connects me to their plans. Without that proof of your allegations, they'll claim you're making unfounded accusations. Sophia's expression showed concern. That's incredibly dangerous. These aren't academics. They're corporate mercenaries. I won't be alone. Marcus gestured toward where Taro was preparing with 4 other warriors. And I have certain advantages now. His hand went instinctively to his leg, where the crocodile tooth lay beneath healing skin. As final preparations were made, Isha approached with small clay pots containing medicinal pastes. She gave detailed instructions through a young woman who had been learning Portuguese. This for fever, the translator explained, indicating a greenish mixture. This for wound cleaning. This if snake bites. Sophia carefully packed these remedies, recognizing their potential value. Tell her we're grateful, the girl translated, then added, Escher says Sophia carries important medicine too, knowledge medicine. Must protect in head, not just in these. She tapped the clay pots. Their departure was delayed when a scout returned with troubling news. The survey team had split up, 2 members continuing their work, while a third headed directly toward the village. They must have detected signs of occupation, Diego said grimly. If they discover an entire tribal settlement in their planned mining zone, we need to intercept them, Marcus decided. Delay Sophia and Diego's departure until we're certain the path is clear, Taro agreed. He, Marcus, and 2 warriors set out immediately, moving swiftly through the forest. Taro led them on a circular route that would intercept the surveyor's likely path while avoiding the main trail to the village. They established an observation point on a ridge overlooking a small clearing. Within an hour, their target appeared, a middle-aged man with expensive technical gear and a satellite phone. He moved with confidence but lacked true jungle experience, frequently consulting his GPS and leaving obvious traces of his passage. He follows coordinates, Taro observed quietly. Looking for village. We need to divert him, Marcus whispered. Send him in a different direction without realizing he's being manipulated, Taro nodded. I know way. While the surveyor rested in the clearing, Taro and 1 warrior circled silently through the underbrush. With incredible stealth, they manipulated the environment, rearranging trail markers, creating false signs of passage leading away from the village. When the man resumed his journey, he unwittingly followed the false trail. Marcus and the warriors shadowed him for 2 hours, ensuring he maintained his misdirected course. Finally satisfied, they returned toward the village. As they approached the perimeter, Taro suddenly froze, signaling for silence. Something had disturbed the normal jungle sounds, a rhythm that didn't belong. He pointed toward a subtle game trail. They crept forward until they could see the cause, a third survey team member they hadn't accounted for. Methodically placing small metal devices at regular intervals along the forest floor. Sensors, Marcus whispered, recognizing the equipment. Perimeter monitoring system. Through binoculars, he observed the man consulting a tablet displaying a topographical map with red circles indicating placement points. Marcus recognized his own research data overlaid with geological surveys. Most disturbing was a document visible on the tablet, letterhead matching the university's Department of Geological Sciences. As the man scrolled, Marcus caught glimpses of his own name, archaeological cover, and extraction timeline. Taro noticed Marcus's reaction. "What is it?" "Proof," Marcus whispered. "The evidence connecting my university to the mining operation." He studied the surveyor carefully. "And something else. I know him." The man's face had been partially obscured by a hat, but as he looked up to check coordinates, Marcus recognized Dr. James Whitaker, not from the archaeology department, but the geology professor who had most enthusiastically supported his expedition funding. He was in on it from the beginning, Marcus realized, manipulating my research from day one. The discovery crystallized everything. His entire academic career had been unwittingly serving corporate interests disguised as scientific inquiry. Even his obsession with his grandfather's legacy had been weaponized against both himself and the Itakara. Whitaker finished placing the sensor and moved deeper into the forest, continuing the perimeter. Taro looked to Marcus questioningly. "We follow him," Marcus decided. "That tablet contains everything we need." Night descended on the forest as Marcus, Taro, and the warriors tracked Whitaker back to the mining company's advance camp. The compound was larger than expected, a cleared area containing several prefabricated structures, portable generators, and equipment covered with tarpaulins. Floodlights created harsh islands of illumination amid the darkness, while the jungle sounds retreated before the mechanical hum of generators. From their concealed position, Marcus counted 8 personnel, the 3 surveyors they'd observed, plus 5 others who appeared to be security rather than scientific staff. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter in predictable patterns. "More dangerous than expected," Taro whispered. Marcus nodded, studying the central structure where Whitaker had entered with his tablet. "That's their command center. The evidence we need is inside." They watched as a satellite communication dish was adjusted, its signal linking the isolated outpost to the outside world. Minutes later, a helicopter appeared on the horizon, its distinctive thrum carrying through the night. Reinforcements, Marcus realized. "We're running out of time." The helicopter landed in the cleared area, rotors whipping debris into the air. 2 men disembarked, one in corporate attire, the other in what appeared to be Brazilian military uniform. They were greeted by Whitaker and escorted inside the main structure. "Military involvement complicates everything," Marcus murmured. "We need to move now, before they can solidify their position." Taro conferred briefly with his warriors. 3 entrances, 6 guards. "We create distraction at equipment area." "You enter main building." Marcus hesitated. "No casualties. These people are misguided, but killing them would only justify military intervention." Taro nodded, retrieving something from his pack. Small clay pot sealed with wax. "Sleep medicine. Very strong." The plan formed quickly. 2 warriors would create a distraction at the equipment area while Taro dealt with the guards. Marcus would enter the command center to retrieve the evidence. As they prepared to separate, Sofia and Diego arrived unexpectedly, moving silently through the underbrush. "What are you doing here?" Marcus demanded in a harsh whisper. You should be headed to the research station. Plans changed, Diego explained. We intercepted radio communications. The company is accelerating their timeline. Heavy equipment arrives tomorrow. They're planning to begin clearing operations immediately, Sophia added, and they're specifically looking for you, Marcus. They know you survived and are with the tribe. They're calling you a security risk to be contained. This grim news only reinforced the urgency of their mission. Sophia and Diego would now provide additional distractions, creating points of confusion around the camp perimeter. They moved into position as clouds obscured the moon. At Taro's signal, the operation began, first with mysterious sounds emanating from multiple directions, drawing guard attention. Then a storage area erupted in noise as equipment mysteriously toppled. Marcus slipped toward the main structure, Taro moving like a shadow beside him. When two guards approached their position, Taro struck with clinical precision, clay pots shattering at their feet, releasing a potent dust that sent the men crumpling to the ground unconscious. The door to the command center stood unguarded now. Inside, voices grew heated, Whitaker arguing with the new arrivals. Marcus caught fragments through the thin walls. Timeline. Acceleration puts the entire operation at risk. Headquarters wants minerals flowing within 6 months. Indigenous presence is a complication, Will. Handle. Marcus eased the door open, slipping inside a darkened anteroom. Through a partition, he could see Whitaker, the corporate representative, and the military officer hunched over maps and documents. Whitaker's tablet sat charging on a side table, momentarily unattended. Moving silently, Marcus reached for the device. Just as his fingers closed around it, a fourth figure emerged from an adjoining room, one of the surveyors, startled to find an intruder. "Security breach!" the man shouted before Marcus could react. Chaos erupted. The military officer drew a sidearm while Whitaker lunged for Marcus, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Hale, what the hell happened to you?" His gaze took in the tribal markings covering Marcus's exposed skin. Marcus clutched the tablet, backing toward the door. "I discovered the truth about my research funding, Professor Whitaker. How long has the geology department been selling access to indigenous lands?" "Don't be naive," Whitaker snapped. "Your grandfather understood the game. Why do you think he buried his discoveries? He found mineral deposits too, just didn't have the resources to exploit them." The accusation struck Marcus like a physical blow. "You're lying. He protected the tribe. He protected his exclusive claim," Whitaker countered. "Made a deal with the locals to keep others away. We found his original samples in the department archives, high concentrations of rare earth elements essential for modern technology." The military officer advanced, weapon raised. "Put down the tablet and surrender, Dr. Hale." Outside, the sounds of conflict intensified. A guard burst through the door behind Marcus. "Sir, we're under attack from all sides." Indigenous hostiles throughout the perimeter. The momentary distraction was all Marcus needed. He slammed his elbow into Whitaker's sternum, sending the older man staggering back. The corporate representative lunged for the tablet, but Marcus pivoted away, years of fieldwork lending him agility his academic appearance belied. The military officer fired, a warning shot that splintered wood above Marcus's head. "Next one won't miss, Doctor." Time seemed to slow. Marcus felt something stirring within him, a strange heat emanating from where the crocodile tooth lay embedded in his leg. The tribal markings on his skin seemed to burn with sudden intensity. With instincts he hadn't known he possessed, Marcus ducked and spun. His hand found the ceremonial knife at his belt, the blade of ancestors. Not to attack, but to sever the power cables running along the wall. Darkness engulfed the room, emergency lights casting everything in blood-red glow. Confusion reigned as Marcus moved with newfound certainty, navigating by senses beyond sight. He burst through the rear door into the night, tablet secured. Behind him, shouted orders and flashlight beams cut through darkness. Ahead, the jungle beckoned, no longer alien but ally. Taro appeared beside him, materializing like a spirit. "You have what we need?" Marcus nodded, clutching the tablet. "Everything." Their plans, the university connection, mining permits, all of it. Then we run, Taro said simply. Others create path. They plunged into the forest as chaos consumed the camp behind them. Explosions of color and sound erupted, tribal diversions drawing pursuit in wrong directions. Through it all, Marcus moved with surprising confidence, his body somehow knowing which path to take, which sounds to trust. The crocodile tooth in his leg seemed to pulse in rhythm with the forest itself, guiding him home. 3 months later, Marcus stood at the edge of a newly established boundary marker. Unlike the ancient stone warnings that had first greeted his expedition, this one bore both traditional Itakara symbols and official government seals, declaring the area a protected indigenous reserve. His body had changed, leaner, harder, marked permanently by both the crocodile's attack and the tribal symbols now etched into his skin. But the greater transformation lay within. The man who had arrived seeking academic glory had disappeared into the jungle, replaced by someone who understood the true value of what he'd discovered. "They're coming," Taro said, appearing silently beside him. Though they now shared fluency in each other's languages, they often communicated with the comfortable brevity of those who no longer needed many words. A motorized canoe appeared around the river bend, Sophia at the helm. Behind her sat representatives from the Federal Indigenous Agency, the Ministry of Environment, and international observers. The last passenger was unexpected, Diego, looking more comfortable in formal attire than Marcus remembered. The meeting that followed took place at a neutral location, a covered platform constructed specifically for interfacing with outside authorities. Marcus sat with the tribal council, his position among them now formalized. Sophia presented documents requiring signatures. "The injunction is now permanent," she explained. The evidence from Whitaker's tablet proved the company falsified environmental impact studies and bribed officials to access protected lands. The government representative nodded. "The mining permits have been revoked. The corporation faces substantial penalties for unauthorized activities in indigenous territory," Diego added. "And 3 professors from your former university have been suspended pending investigation into academic fraud and corporate collusion." Marcus absorbed this news with complicated emotions. His academic career was effectively over, his name now associated with a controversial whistleblowing case rather than archaeological discovery. Yet the trade seemed increasingly worthwhile, and the boundaries, he asked. Sophia smiled. "Expanded to include all the territories on the textile map. The satellite imagery of the ancestors' garden proved continuous habitation for centuries, more than enough to establish legal claim." The Itakara elders listened as Taro translated, their expressions revealing little to outsiders. But Marcus recognized their subtle signs of approval. Decades of strategic invisibility had finally given way to a new approach, selective engagement on their own terms. After the officials departed, promising ongoing protection and regular monitoring of boundary violations, Marcus walked with Sophia along the river where his life had changed. "The university still wants their archaeologist back," she said gently. "They're distancing themselves from the geology department's actions. Your department chair called it a regrettable interdepartmental misunderstanding." Marcus laughed without humor. "Convenient. They're offering a full professorship, complete academic freedom, your grandfather's reputation fully restored." He stopped, looking toward where Taro waited at a discreet distance. "And what about my research? My findings?" Sophia hesitated. "That's your decision. The Itakara have agreed to limited academic documentation, with their oversight and approval of all publications." Marcus considered this carefully. "And if I choose to remain here? As their cultural liaison?" Sophia smiled. "I think they've already decided that question for you." She nodded toward the medallion he still wore, now complemented by additional symbols of tribal status. "Besides, someone needs to ensure the boundaries remain respected." As dusk approached, they returned to the village, where preparations for a celebration were underway. Children ran to greet Marcus, chattering in their language which he now understood. Escher beckoned him to sit beside her at the place of honor. From a ceremonial box, she removed an object that connected past to present, a modern digital camera modified with tribal decorations and protective symbols. She placed it in Marcus's hands with formal deliberation for memory keeping, she said in her own language. Stories must be told in new ways to new generations. Marcus understood the profound trust this represented. He was being authorized to document what had never been recorded, not for outside academic consumption, but for the tribe's own historical continuity. Later, as firelight illuminated dances enacting the story of recent events, the crocodile attack, the threat from outsiders, the successful defense of their lands, Marcus reflected on the journey that had led him here. His grandfather's incomplete journal still remained, neither fully destroyed nor published. Like Marcus himself, it existed in the liminal space between worlds. Diego approached, carrying a satellite phone. "It's time to check the boundaries," he said. "Drone surveillance shows vehicles approaching the northern sector." Marcus nodded, rising from his place of honor with the practiced movement of someone now at home in two worlds. He touched the crocodile tooth beneath his healed skin, feeling its familiar pulse, no longer foreign, but fully integrated. "Some histories are meant to be guarded," he said, repeating the wisdom that had begun his transformation, "not unearthed." He stepped into the forest that had nearly killed him and then saved him, moving with the confidence of someone who had finally discovered where he truly belonged.